Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the Mothman Prophecies, what the evidence actually shows about Point Pleasant. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. Between November 1966 and December 1967, over 100 people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, reported seeing a large winged creature with red eyes. During the same period, strange phone calls, men in black visits, and other anomalous events were reported. Then the Silver Bridge collapsed on December 15, 1967, killing 46 people. Author John Keel investigated the entire episode and concluded something genuinely strange had visited Point Pleasant. The evidence he gathered is more compelling than most people realize. The comfortable dismissal is to call every sighting a misidentified bird and every strange phone call an overactive imagination. But Keel documented hundreds of independent witnesses who did not know each other, reported experiences over a wide geographic area, and described consistent details without access to each other's accounts. The Silver Bridge collapse has a complete engineering explanation, a corroded eye-bar link. But the coincidence of the collapse with the peak of the sighting wave remains unexplained. Was anything real happening in Point Pleasant in 1966 and 1967? And if so, what was it? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Human perception is fallible. This is not an insult, it is neuroscience. The brain does not passively record reality, it actively constructs it, filling gaps with expectation, inferring causes from insufficient data, and storing memories that are reshaped by subsequent experience. Eyewitness testimony is the weakest form of courtroom evidence precisely because what people see and what actually happened frequently diverge. Sound can cause visual hallucinations. Infrasound at specific frequencies can produce feelings of dread, the sensation of a presence, and even visual disturbances. Sleep deprivation, stress, and hypoxia can generate vivid experiences indistinguishable from waking reality. All of this is relevant when evaluating modern mysteries. Many apparently anomalous experiences have prosaic explanations rooted in human neurology, temporal lobe activity, hypnagogic hallucinations, shared social expectation shaping perception. A willingness to consider these explanations is not dismissiveness, it is intellectual hygiene. The brain is capable of generating extraordinarily convincing experiences that have no external cause. And yet, the perceptual explanation has its limits. It cannot account for physical evidence, radiation burns, landing traces, electromagnetic interference on electronic equipment, or anomalous readings on calibrated instruments. When multiple independent witnesses, separated by distance, report identical details, mass hallucination strains credulity. When physical measurements corroborate subjective experience, the neurological explanation is insufficient. These are the cases that demand another look. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Mothman Prophecies. What the evidence actually shows about Point Pleasant is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The first widely reported Mothman sighting occurred on November 12, 1966, when two couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallette, reported seeing a large gray creature with glowing red eyes near an abandoned TNT manufacturing area outside Point Pleasant. The couples described the creature as approximately 6 to 7 feet tall with wings folded against its body, and said it followed their car at speeds up to 100 miles per hour. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered, over the following 13 months, more than 100 separate sightings were reported in and around Point Pleasant by witnesses who, in many cases, had no knowledge of each other's accounts. John Keel, who arrived to investigate in early 1967, documented the reports systematically and noted consistent descriptive elements across independent accounts, particularly the red reflective eyes and the creature's apparent ability to move without visible wing flapping. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine the Silver Bridge, a suspension bridge crossing the Ohio River between Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed during rush hour on December 15, 1967, killing 46 people. Engineering investigation determined the cause to be a stress corrosion crack in a single I-bar link in the suspension chain, a mechanical failure unrelated to any external event. The collapse occurred at the apparent end of the Mothman sighting wave. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the TNT area where the first sightings occurred, formerly the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, was the site of a World War II munitions manufacturing facility and contained dozens of concrete igloos used for storing explosives. The area was subsequently found to have significant chemical contamination from the wartime industrial activity. Keel documented evidence suggesting the area may have been under government surveillance during the sighting period. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Keel documented a parallel wave of UFO sightings in the same region during the same period, along with reports of mysterious strangers, men in black, who visited witnesses after sightings and advised them not to speak publicly. He also documented a phenomenon he called the Indrid Cold Encounters. A mysterious figure who appeared to multiple witnesses, gave his name as Indrid Cold, and made predictions about future events. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. A second major Mothman sighting wave occurred in Chicago in 2017, with 55 reported encounters by independent witnesses over several months. The wave was investigated by Lance Strickler and documented by the Mutual UFO Network. The Chicago reports showed a similar clustering pattern to the Point Pleasant wave and included witnesses from diverse backgrounds with no obvious connection to each other or knowledge of the Point Pleasant original. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Mothman Prophecies, what the evidence actually shows about Point Pleasant. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Keel's own interpretation was that Mothman is what he called an ultra-terrestrial, an entity from a non-physical or paraphysical level of reality that manifests in forms culturally recognizable to those who encounter it. Keel believed the entire cluster of events, including UFOs, men in black, and Mothman, reflected a single phenomenon interacting with human consciousness. This interpretation has no testable mechanism, but is taken seriously by researchers who study anomalous experience clusters. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that all Mothman sightings reflect misidentification of known animals, most likely sandhill cranes, great horned owls, or herons seen under unusual lighting conditions or at close range. Sandhill cranes migrate through West Virginia in autumn, precisely when the sighting wave peaked. Their large wingspan and reddish eye patches could produce the reported descriptions under conditions of poor visibility and heightened fear. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Mothman sightings constitute a mass psychogenic event. An initial genuine or misidentified encounter created community expectation, which shaped the interpretation of subsequent ambiguous experiences. The concentration of reports in a specific geographic area during a defined time period is consistent with social contagion of anomalous experience, a well-documented phenomenon in the psychology of collective belief. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Mothman Prophecies, what the evidence actually shows about Point Pleasant, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence. material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes: the Silver Bridge collapse is fully and completely explained by civil engineering analysis. A stress corrosion crack in I-bar 330 of the northbound suspension chain, which had been growing undetected for years due to a manufacturing imperfection. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation found no external cause. The temporal coincidence with the end of the Mothman wave is exactly that, a coincidence, not a causal or predictive connection. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented sandhill cranes migrate through West Virginia in the autumn months of October through December, precisely the period of the Mothman sighting peak. Adult sandhill cranes stand up to 4 feet tall, with wingspans of up to 7 feet, have reddish skin patches around their eyes, and can appear dramatically larger at night or in headlights. Roger Scarberry's original description of the creature gliding without flapping its wings is consistent with crane flight behavior. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the 2017 Chicago Mothman wave provides a naturalistic experiment in sighting wave dynamics. The 55 reports emerged after initial media coverage of the first sighting, spread geographically in ways consistent with media exposure rather than an actual moving creature, and included descriptions that varied more widely than the original Point Pleasant reports, consistent with suggestion and expectation, shaping ambiguous perceptions rather than encounters with a consistent physical entity. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Mothman Prophecies, what the evidence actually shows about Point Pleasant. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Point Pleasant holds an annual Mothman festival that draws over 50,000 visitors and has become a significant regional tourism driver. The Mothman Museum opened in 2005, and a steel Mothman statue was erected in 2003. The Silver Bridge collapse is fully explained by engineering failure with no supernatural element. The Chicago 2017 sighting wave demonstrated how Mothman reports propagate through communities exposed to media coverage. Richard Gere starred in a film adaptation of Keel's book in 2002. Keel's original documentation of the full Point Pleasant phenomenon remains the most detailed primary source available, and his broader theoretical framework for understanding anomalous experience clusters continues to influence researchers in the field regardless of one's conclusions about what specifically occurred in Point Pleasant. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Mothman Prophecies, what the evidence actually shows about Point Pleasant, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Mothman ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.